starting in court, the Pretoria High Court has set aside the Gauteng Education Department's placement of 55 English learners at Hoërskool Overvaal. The school launched an urgent application to overturn the department's decision. The legal representatives of both parties had concluded their arguments last week Friday, and the school's legal representative had argued that Overvaal had reached its admissions capacity. The department argued that there was enough space at the school and that the school was willing to help them with additional resources. There was a brief confrontation in court following the ruling, and Education MEC Panyazale Sofi has described the ruling as a major setback for non-racialism. All right, let's cross live to our reporter, Patricia Visagie, who is at the High Court in Pretoria. Patricia, a very good afternoon to you. Wow, I guess, of course, as the MEC for Education, Panyazale Sofi, has mentioned, what a major setback for the non-racialism, particularly being promoted in the schools. Tell us about the ruling this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Alicia, and to our viewers. Now, as he did mention, for, of course, the Department of Education, it was a huge disappointment, and, of course, also for some of the lobby groups that we saw coming to this court to support the department's, of course, court battle, and some of the parents of the 55 learners who are, of course, at the center of this particular dispute. And a lot of disappointment that we saw at the end, with a lot of shunting that also took place here in the courtroom. Some of the parents, of course, echoing their dismay, their disappointment, saying that it will not be ending here. They're going to the particular school on Wednesday, saying that if their children are not admitted, are not accepted by the parents, or rather by the school, then no child will enter the gates of this particular school on a Wednesday when the schools do open. So a lot of tension played out right after, of course, Judge Burl Prinsloo delivered that judgment, and we could see tensions heating up here. A lot of words were exchanged, some of the words that we really did not expect. Some of the words that we saw coming from the public gallery were saying that they're going to burn the school down if, of course, the school's policies around language do not change. And it seems like the parents and the departments are still adamant that this has nothing to do with the school being full to capacity. They are adamant, they still believe that there is a language discrimination that is taking place, that basically the 55 learners are being discriminated against. They are being excluded on the basis of language. Now, we heard the lawyers arguing last week, and they were saying that this has nothing to do with language. They were saying that Afrikaans is being used as a tool to segregate English-speaking children, and of course keep them outside of these schools. Them also arguing that this is a phenomenon that's been playing out in your traditional Afrikaans schools for very long over the years, since the dawn of democracy, saying, but you know, the public schools should cater for all demographics fairly, and that's what the parents are still arguing. And I'm standing here with one of the parents of the 55 learners, and this is, of course, Clarissa Mofokeng. And you were very unhappy, saying one of the things that are really sitting very heavy on your heart right now is the fact that you don't know what will happen to your child when these schools open.
Yeah, you're correct. We don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to my child on Wednesday. But one thing that I'm certain about is that from grade 1, I gave the department my child. So equally, I'm expecting the department to be on my child up until my child is doing matric. Then they can hand over my child to me so that I can see whether I take my child to a tertiary ward. But like we said earlier, we are very disappointed on a case, and we want to emphasize it. The manner in which Judge Prinsloo handled this case, it's very questionable. It's worrisome.
Talking about that, repeatedly we've heard you guys say, but he's biased. Yes. He did not handle this case, according to the parents, with a judicial prudence.
Yes, that's our observation as parents.
Why? I mean, the facts were laid out in court.
I agree. The facts were laid out in court, and I believe that our advocate did what he was supposed to do, what we expected him to do. But there was a stage whereby the advocate of a state, of a school, was crippling, and the judge would direct, the advocate would put words in his mouth. This is what you're talking about.
This is about what happened on Friday, right?
On Friday it was worse. It was worse on Friday, yes.
Okay. And so you don't believe that there was fairness in this particular case, or?
We don't believe that there was fairness in this case. Honestly speaking, we don't believe. I think the entire nation saw it on TV and so on, and many have even raised it, even those who were not in court.
Now, on Wednesday, what is your particular committee planning to do? You're saying you're going back to the school, but the judge just excluded your children.
Look, the judge has excluded our children, and we have taken a stand that the department placed our children at Overvaal.
Regardless of this court ruling, how is that going to work?
Regardless of what Judge Prinsloo has said, on Wednesday we are going to accompany our children to a school. They would be on a uniform so that they can be visible that they are our children. Fortunate enough, it's only few that cannot be isolated on a basis of a skin, but majority of them, you'll see them from a distance.
But what about respecting the rule of law? There was a court order that was handed down today. Are you not respecting that?
Look, we respect our courts, we respect them, but it's unfortunate that we don't believe in what Judge Prinsloo has raised. It's very questionable. Look, we are not happy about his conduct. So his conduct is questionable. So it doesn't make sense to us to stay home and say that now the judge has ruled on the favor of a school. But what we're going to do, we are waiting for a department. Department did not communicate with us.
Okay, just before, because we're running out of time, something very disturbing happened. The hurdling that was happening, parents shouting and echoing their unhappiness, the threats that came from the public gallery, some even going as far as saying they will burn the school.
Yeah.
How do we now deal with that issue?
I must clarify that thing. All parents, we are here. The reason we are saying that we want our children to attend to that school is primarily that we want to protect that school. We have made a stand with parents that even when our children are there, we want to keep the status of that school the way it is. There is no a parents, and would equally as a committee would not allow any parent, would not allow any, even if it's a parent or not, would not allow anyone to vandalize school, because that school, it's our school. We own that school as a society, living in that area. So it's our responsibility to protect the school. But I never heard, and I want to emphasize that, I never heard anyone saying that is going to ban the school. But if there is one or two who have said that they are going to ban a school, probably it will be coming from emotions. So that from Pretoria to Vaal, by the time you reach Vaal, emotions will be cooled down. So I don't think there is anyone who has interest of banning a school, because we have a responsibility as a society to protect that school. That school belongs to us. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Of course, Mr. Tlhoriso Mofokeng, he is one of the parents of the 55 learners who are at the center of course, the Gauteng Department of Education's battle with the vereniging-based Hoërskool Overvaal. But let's also get reaction from the other side. And now I am, of course, joined by the legal representative for the Hoërskool Overvaal's SGB, and this is, of course, Mr. Werner Heeman. If you can just tell us, a lot of emotions, there's a lot of allegations and accusations that are making the rounds. Are you happy with how everything is going so far?
Well, with the outcome of the application, we are very pleased with. What we sought to achieve, we did, and that was to confirm that Hoërskool Overvaal does not have any capacity vis-à-vis the other school who does have capacity. The important issue to raise, as our central point, was that there is no physical physical space available. And so we are pleased with the outcome, and we also think what the judge has said that is of importance is not only that he say Overvaal does not have capacity, he also said that the other schools in the vicinity do have capacity. So it will be a reason for elevation and happiness from many parents' sides where they live in uncertainty at the moment, where the judge had confirmed there are 2 high schools, not only 1 but 2 high schools, who does have sufficient capacity to accommodate the learners so that the school children can commence their year on Wednesday.
It seems like there was a little bit of foul play that also took place, on the sidelines of this court case with the affidavits that had, conflicting statements and so forth. Your reaction on that?
Absolute shocking revelations that came about. One can imagine neighboring schools are in contact with each other. They have positive relations with each other. They more or less know what's going on, which is facts are common to them. And that is on this bona fide basis that we based our case. And we said there are 2 principles admitting that they've got place. And they even commissioned an affidavit to that respect. So we share the judge's concern and say this is an objective concern which one with a mere reading of the papers would conclude to say it's highly questionable when you have a situation 2 days later, a complete different version came about. And we illustrated this to court, and the court dealt with this with contempt in the right way.
Do you think that is perhaps the main basis that maybe compelled or motivated the judge to rule in your favor?
I wouldn't like to speculate on a judgment. When one receives a judgment, one can have, gather your own opinion on the reading of the judgment. But independent of that, any basis, any application where there's a change of version all of a sudden, and then further affidavits came which suggest certain intimidation, it is indeed worrying. But as it speaks to the centrality of the case, the judge also referred to the fact that it is common cause actually, that the questions of capacity is quite qualifying and important for a case like this. So given that, the revelations are important to establish that they indeed have the requisite capacity.
But the parents of the 55 learners are accusing the judge of being biased, especially because of some of the remarks he made on Friday. It seemed like he was leaning more towards your side, he was assisting your counsel, and he was very, very hard on the state's advocate. Even some of us journalists who were sitting in the gallery were shocked at some of the comments that came out. How do you respond to those allegations?
It's totally unacceptable to go to a judge and say this. The correct way would be to look at the application, and I would be glad to share the application with anyone who requests and come to the conclusion there's been no assistance. It has solely been based on the law. And if one have regards to the judgment that has been read for almost 2 hours, one would find many references to the law, to case law, etc. And what we would say, the school has built a proper case, but one also must be taken into account this entire background of this case. This case didn't start only Tuesday. It actually started much earlier. There were letters written, it was ignored. This is important to know when one speaks of conduct. And the courts in general do not accept when one party simply ignores the pleas and letters of another party. It necessitates a school who does not have the necessary funds to do this sort of litigation to go to court. So when the school repeatedly stated in letters, we do not want to go to court, and the department refuses to answer to the letters, what other route does the school have? So it's unfortunate that it has come to this, but we must say that we are, as I stated, we are very pleased with the outcome. I think obviously it's the correct one.
But you also stand accused of using Afrikaans as a tool to segregate, to discriminate, exclude other learners from, equal access to education, and fueling racism on the lines. How do you respond to those accusations?
This is completely denied. This was actually accused for in the papers themselves, and we dealt with adequate length with regards to those. The theme of racism and all those other deplorable sort of accusations that came our way was actually not done by us. It started with a media conference some time ago, and these words and these inflammable words only ensued and gone further. Our position is what we've argued and what we stand by, and we say is the correct position. When there's not sufficient demand for a particular language of choice, in this case Afrikaans, and the school cannot fill its capacity, the school, it has no other option as to change. But in our position, it was not the case, and there was a sufficient number of Afrikaans learners. We defend that position. We think it's the correct one, especially read with admission regulations. Remember that admission regulations is relatively new, and this was also to apply that. So the access to education question is also addressed already. The fact is that there is available space in the vicinity. This has been covered by the judge, so everybody has access to education that participated in this case, and including the parents who are dissatisfied with the judgment.
Before I let you go shortly, some of the threats that came from the public gallery just after the judge read his judgment, especially in terms of what the parents are planning for Wednesday. Your response?
I've used those words a lot of time since the judgment came. That is unfortunate. This, again, is an unfortunate incident. The school doesn't believe in confrontation. The school doesn't want confrontation. So what we only can do, we were all present in court when these chants started. What we only can do is we take note of them, and if we are compelled to take in measures to secure the safety of the learners and the community members in the vicinity, we will do so. But again, the school's modus operandi right through was fact-based, evidence-based. We do not rely on emotion. We do not rely on anything external to that. We want a good partnership with the department. That is really the truth. We want to have a positive relation and an honest relationship. And we hope that that can be. We will actually hope that the department also intervenes if there's some sort of action planned on Wednesday to try their best not to elevate the situation. But we find it unfortunate, as I said, and any confrontation is actually it's not welcome at the school, and we want positive relationships with everyone in the community.
All right, thank you so much, Alicia. There, of course, ending that interview with Werner Heeman. He is the lawyer for the Overvaal SGB. Of course, giving us their version, saying that they're happy with the outcome of this particular court case, and again denying very strongly that the school is by any means using Afrikaans as an excuse to, of course, segregate or exclude English-speaking learners from having equal access to this particular school, and again saying that, but it's only based on capacity. But the other issue that's also very sensitive is also, of course, the issue around the manipulation around the affidavits that we, of course, throughout today's judgment, we heard in the verdict of Judge Bill Prinsloo. He was very angry about some of the numbers that seem to have been changed and the versions that was changed in the affidavits that were submitted to this court. But I think the attention now goes straight to the parents who are threatening with action on Wednesday, saying they basically rejecting this ruling. They are taking their children to the school on Wednesday, regardless of the fact that there's a judgment that is binding, that of course excludes the children from that school, saying that the Department of Education must make another plan. They must enroll these children at another school, and it is definitely not Hoërskool Overvaal. But the parents are not having it. They're saying that children are going there come on Wednesday. And of course, we heard the MEC of Gauteng for Education, and that is, of course, Panyasa Lesufi, saying they respect the rule of law. He's called for calm, saying the parents must not take any unlawful action. They must remain within the confines of the law, saying that they will not leave this matter here. If it means going to the highest court in the land, the Constitutional Court, to have this matter overturned, they will do so. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on Wednesday. But it remains disturbing that on the eve of the 2018 academic year, you have about 55 learners who do not know what the future holds for this academic year. Will they have a place come Wednesday, or will they not have a place? We'll have to wait and see what happens on Wednesday, Alicia.
Definitely. Thank you so much to our reporter there, coming to us live from the Pretoria High Court after that mammoth ruling there. Of course, Judge Prinsloo ruling that the 55 English-speaking learners cannot be enrolled into Hoërskool Overvaal. And of course, we've just heard deliberation and comments from both the SGB, the school's SGB, and of course, some of the parents who have vowed that they will be taking their children come Wednesday to that particular school.